Today on the Self Smarter podcast.
Really reflecting on what would you like to accomplish relative to overcoming a challenge and or leaning into an opportunity so you have a triumph.
Right.
That to me has been more of a winning mindset in terms of the way I look at a year forward. Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello, and welcome to Self Smarter. I'm Megan, and this is my friend and co-host, Danelle.
Hello, everyone.
We're back.
We are. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. It has. It actually kind of feels weird. Not like too weird, but just we haven't been recording in Dallas.
I know, but it's been great because I think there's a lot of voices from our team and a lot of great content that's been put out there that were wonderful perspectives. And so really proud of Hannah and Mackenzie and Hannah and Hallie Caroline. It's just been, those have been some amazing episodes, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed it. So they were very vulnerable and put themselves out there, and I think it was really, really great episodes to include in our collection.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be fun if we talked about, it's a new year. And I know that's kind of, at this point, it's kind of the hustle and bustle and the excitement around New Year is kind of fading.
Okay.
But
is it?
I mean, it's mid-month. And now we've got people who are either making their resolutions really happen. Like, this is kind of the point after the new year where people are like, yeah, that resolution's not quite going to work out.
Yeah.
Or they're like, no. Like, I'm going to pound through this promise and make sure that this happens. So I was just curious. I don't necessarily want to talk about our resolutions for this year. I thought it would be way more fun to talk about what we resolved to do last year and how that worked out. Do you remember what you resolved to do?
I was a little lean
on resolutions.
On resolutions, and I try to set goals for myself. That's been a reoccurring thing. But I think I had made so many changes the fall before. 2022 was a big year of a lot for me. So I think I came into 2023 with a little bit different perspective. But I resolved to definitely bring a lot more. If you think about dry January.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I committed to dry January. I drank a lot of dry Sauvignon Blanc.
I bet all the dry wines.
Yes, so no, I didn't.
Do you have anything extra dry? I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly. I respect everyone, and living in New York, that is a thing.
Dry January?
Oh, it's a big deal, and the restaurants get involved.
I bet they're probably sad about it.
The cocktail list is expansive. It's still expensive. It's still $20 for no booze in it. Yeah, I'm like, no thanks. Anyway, no, I mean, I would say that my resolutions were extremely personal, and I think it was, again, I was still reeling from 2022 and the big changes in my life, and I'm a little bit more intentional about 2024. So that is what's important. But, I wanted to travel. I traveled. I wanted to do more exploring of New York City and get to know the city a lot more. I wanted to expand my community there. I certainly wanted to have as many guests as possible, come to the city and experience it, and also experience New York in different seasons than what I had typically as a visitor been able to do. And so I did, and I learned the subway system. I feel very proud of that. I still stumble, but I learned to take the subway, and so I did very much things that I'd done before, but then very New York centric is what I would say. How about you?
That's awesome. I think I did something for a while that was pretty good. So I said it on this podcast. I said I was going to get into Pilates, and I did. And that sustained for about 6 months, and I felt great. I mean, I was sore. I was going to cuss there, so I'm reserving the word.
Okay, all right.
Sore as shit is what I was going to say.
I think that's okay on this podcast.
And I should have invested in Epsom salt because I bought so much of it. But it was just, I just got kind of tired of it. Like I tend to do that. Like I do something over and over really hardcore and then I get tired of it.
Sure.
So anyway, I'm going to start that back. I also resolved last year to go to Europe for a while. didn't because, you know, Cooper ended up going to summer school in New York. And so we just, you know, we have to make money. We all do. We have to make logical money decisions, and that just wasn't in the cards. So, but still, I would, you know, this year I would like to spend some time traveling and just like you know, I don't want to get to know Dallas a whole lot more.
Well, then I will be your accountability partner, and I'll just be sending you places that.
Cool. You already did. You did today or yesterday.
I know. I'll be in your ear about that. And I'm starting Pilates as well with a new coach, so we can do that together as well and hold each other accountable.
Okay, so my goal though, because I got up to level 1, I think I'd like to get up to level 2.
Okay. All right. That's a great goal.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so before we get going into our topic, let's skip to this quick commercial. It's a new year, Self-Smarter listeners, and never is there a better time than now to delve into your business's marketing plan for the upcoming year. At DMA, we're eager to help you do everything you've got going on with marketing, but especially the things that you should be thinking about right now. For instance, let's finalize that marketing plan. Let's get your trade show booths and plans in order for the year. Let's analyze your digital marketing efforts for the prior year and put those learnings to work for you this coming year. Everything social media related. We can help you grow your community, engage with people more often, and ultimately build a relationship between your business and your prospective customers. No matter your marketing goal for the upcoming year, our team of marketers is ready to help you. To contact us, simply reach out to info@dma-solutions.com and we'll schedule a call to get down to business. Okay, so we're talking today about reflecting on 2023 and embracing 2024. We've already started this episode talking a little bit about resolutions from last year and how that went or didn't go so well. So I just think, you know, when we're thinking about this episode right now is such a good time for leaders to really think about what went well from a leadership perspective. So getting a little more narrow there, or what didn't, which is sometimes even more helpful when you look at things like, I didn't do that, and I said I was going to do that, and use this information to kind of build on our strategies for the year ahead. So I thought it would be, and I know you did too, we talked about this, we want to get a little candid today in terms of how our business went, what it was like living through those changes in 2023. And not even changes, but it was just the evolution of a business. Yeah. Every year in a business, there are going to be changes. And as leaders, the question is are we prepared for that? I'd love to say we're prepared for it most of the time, but guess what? We're not, because we don't always know what challenges we're going to be facing. Too bad we're not soothsayers, because, you know, that would make things a lot easier. Yeah. So this year, this episode, I thought we could talk about those things and just kind of encourage you listeners to be thinking about yourselves.
Yeah, I think, you know, resolutions, I don't know, they are what they are. And I think our conversation probably, if you know, explain that a little bit better. They're goals, or they're things you want to accomplish in the year, things you want to, you know, commit yourself to. And I think that is fine. Yeah. I think from a leadership perspective, whether it's personally or professionally, you know, wherever you've designated leadership in your life, and I think most of our listeners, we're pretty comfortable with who you are. Yeah. I think you're leaders in multiple aspects of your life, and that can include in parenting, that can include your community, that can include certainly your work. I think what the more important thing that we can do, if goals and resolutions are not necessarily what you feel like you need to do every January, like if you find that to be a bit of a challenge, or if you find yourself not necessarily leaning into that, or if you do, this could be an addition too. But I really think reflection on a previous year really needs to be, as you said, focused on what went well and what was challenging. So the triumphs and the challenges of that year, and trying to sit down at the beginning of a period, whatever period that is. For most of us, we look at a calendar year, it's January through December. What are some things that we would like to see in order of our leadership roles, the roles that we have committed to, relative to things that we want to have been positive? You know, what can we predict might be of a challenge? and or we're carrying over from a previous year that we want to see that challenge then become something that we overcame. And I think that to me is where the energy for preparing for a time period before, in this instance we're talking about a calendar year, I think that type of mental preparation is a mindset that is more productive for the role of leadership.
Agreed.
In my opinion. Because yes, deciding you want to read 20 more books or listen to, 10 more podcasts, you'll get to rocking and rolling on those things, and then life is going to happen and you can kind of feel a little bit let down. But if we're looking through a lens of, obviously set those goals for yourself, again, at the same time be thinking about, if I'm looking back on a year, what are the things that I want to see as major accomplishments? And they might happen in a few of the months. They might happen in 1 week in a given time period. But I think really reflecting on what would you like to accomplish relative to overcoming a challenge and or leaning into an opportunity so you have a triumph.
Right.
That to me has been more of a winning mindset in terms of the way I look at a year forward. And I think that's why when you asked me the question at the beginning of the podcast, I kind of hem and hawed, because I really don't look at a year any longer under those lights. Do I have goals? Of course I have goals, but I may decide to set a goal in April to be accomplished by August.
That's fair.
And so I think
it's like giving yourself a little break.
It is, because I think a year is a long time.
It is a long
There's
time.
a lot of things that can happen in a year that can dissuade us, and then we look back and go, oh, I didn't do what I said I was going to do.
Right.
The fact that you stuck with Pilates and got to level 1, it doesn't matter that you didn't do that for 12 months, but you kind of see that as, oh, well, I only did it for 6 months. So what?
Yeah,
you accomplished your goal.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, again, just tweaking of the mindset and really using the years forwards and backwards as a catalyst for what we want to triumph over, and realizing current challenges that exist that we want to overcome, as well as those that we might predict given what a year ahead might throw our way.
Totally.
So.
I think too, I wasn't necessarily planning on saying this, but listening to you speak, I was thinking, something that you and I were able to do, I think in 2023, was pick goals based on emotions. Like, does this bring me joy anymore?
Yeah.
So in favor of achieving something, going towards something, or even in favor of walking away from something, does this thing that I'm, like the minute Pilates was a chore for me and it wasn't fun and I was having to like cram it in to my schedule, it wasn't fun for me anymore. Yeah. So I think we have to be okay with those types of decisions throughout the year, even though you said, I'm going to do 12 months of to your point.
Yeah.
And then you make it 6 months and you're like, oh, I'm not going to get my year. Well, it's okay. I did do it until it didn't bring me joy anymore. And hopefully that day will come back when it does. And
sure.
Here I am. So anyway, I just think that's, use your emotions. And Ellen and I talk about this a lot. I'm like, well, how does that make you feel? Exploring New York clearly brought you joy. Getting the subway system down was a feat in and of itself. And it didn't require anything but you to just try, So I think it's just perspective.
It is.
So then let's talk about some things that challenged us business-wise in 2023. Are you open to being open about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know of many businesses, and the interesting thing about my time in New York is I've met a lot of people in our field of marketing. I don't know, like, it wasn't intentional. I didn't join a bunch of marketing groups. I mean, there's some executive groups that I'm involved with, but I just met a lot of people, and I guess New York is just kind of, there's just a lot of marketing and media people in this space, and we've had 2 great guests on our previous podcast with Molly and Sarah, and I would say that the reason why I teed that point up is to say that across the board, I haven't met many people in any area of business, but in particular marketing, where the impact of inflation on business. Yeah. And I don't know that it's just inflation, and maybe Drew's listening to this and he's like, it's not just about that, because Drew is my financial compass about a lot of things, macro and micro. But I just know that whatever has happened in our economy or what is anticipated to happen, whether it's interest rates, what's going on in banking, what's going on in all of the other areas that impact really how our money flows and what that looks like. Yeah, it has been very, very impactful in the space for which our particular business serves. And we have found ourselves after 20 years in business. I'm very proud to say we'll be 20 years old in March, April. And we've seen some impacts to our business that we've never experienced before. Yeah. We've experienced them somewhat, and then it would turn around. Now, for those of you who may be new to listening to the podcast, we serve predominantly one industry, which is perishable food industry, so farming. Your fresh food that you eat, those are the clients that we serve, and we serve those are our clients, as well as any service oriented. Think about your packaging, think about how your food gets delivered to you. So those are our clients. So the impact on food that is grown from an economic standpoint, if you think about, we're impacted by fuel, we're impacted by, weather, massive impacts on weather, which is not really economic, but it still ends up being economic, right? Water. And then, and if I don't want to be political here, but immigration, there's just a lot of things. If you look at who, how
harvest our food.
That's right. And so there's just a lot there. So I think it's the combination for our particular business where we had like this economic issue with a lot of scrutiny around marketing. So there was, there were at times where business was withdrawn from us, and it had nothing to do with performance. It was skepticism about marketing. And when there's finite amount of resources available to keep a business running, sometimes marketing is one of those things. It's unfortunate because marketing could also be the catalyst that could turn that around. I won't get on my soapbox about that. That being said, and then it's also the impact to the particular niche industry of which we served that has brought us much just joy and it was a combination. So we have had to do some things differently and think through some things differently. That, and I say all of that to say that has challenged us as leaders unlike we've ever been challenged before. And I think sometimes, especially when I have discussions with folks who listen to our podcast, there's this tone with people that I've noticed, and I think you've experienced the same, is that we've got it figured out. No.
We're still figuring it out.
We will always be figuring it out, whether
it's never enough.
And it's just like, I'm always going to be figuring out how to be a mom to my adult daughter who's 23, that's different than 16, that's different than 18, that's going to be different than 25, 30, 40. Like, it's just one of those things. It doesn't mean that I don't take all that knowledge and wisdom with me, but I also have to be agile. We have a whole episode on the importance of agility. Yeah. And I think this year has taught you and I more about agility than all of the previous 19 years.
Yes.
I mean, seriously. So that's me being vulnerable about what we face. And I was like, I think now we're starting to reap some of the lessons of a very challenging year for our business. Yeah. We're starting to see some changes. We made a lot of drastic changes in our business, and we're starting to see that come to fruition. A lot of difficult decisions have been made. So that's part of leadership.
It is.
And we don't talk a lot about that on here because it just so happens that we were already a full almost year and a half in before we started facing some of these challenges. And now here we are. We're on the other side of a lot of them. Yep. And, we lived through it, but that's what we want to talk about a little bit more.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on the next thing, the logical next thing, I'm listening to you talk about the inflation and the impact on our business is, okay, well, how do we manage resources as a result of that? Mm-hmm. And so a challenge for us in 2023 was getting our arms around, let's call it expenses, of things that we had been hanging on to for 20 years that maybe aren't necessary anymore. They had lived out there,
Well, I have to correct. I don't know that we have many of the same expenses other than payroll that we had for 20 years, but things that we'd had, that we were investing a lot of money in that maybe were no longer serving us.
Not needing that anymore. Like, do we really need to do that? And so we had to make those decisions. So while our business was being impacted in the way you just described. We also have people working here who are looking to grow. Mm-hmm. So those things are counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like, we're trying to cut expenses and people are wanting to make more money. Mm-hmm. So that was really hard to talk through with people.
Yeah, and I don't know that, I think it's like evaluate expenses, because I think cut expenses is just like the general term. I think we were evaluating expenses as it relates to, how long is this, I don't even know if the right word is squeeze, but how long is our industry going to be impacted by all these different factors? How long do we have to prepare for this potential, moment in time, and what can we do to preserve the things that matter the most to us, which is our people, being a human-centric, which we talk about all the time, a human-centric organization where we invest in development, we invest in people, we invest in learning, we invest in all those things. It's like you almost have to sit down and say, what are the non-negotiable things on your P&L that have to stay? What are the things that need to go because you're not fully utilizing that? And what are the things that you are kind of in that yellow area? Maybe you just need to restructure the relationship with a vendor, or you need to restructure things and really look at your business in that way a little bit differently. And I think relative to where you were headed to people, of course you want your people to continue to grow. But I think when you have the right team and you have the right culture, and you're sharing openly about what's going on with the business, there's a lot of times, and we've experienced this, so there's some self-selection there that says, actually, I've been wanting to talk to you about working part-time. Mm-hmm. I'm a new mom. And if that's an option and that will help the company, I get to stay with the company that I love. Mm-hmm. I get to do things a little bit differently in my personal life. And is that an opportunity? So I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but yeah, it's not always cutting expenses. It's just reevaluating them. And that's not always a pleasant part of any version of leadership, whether that's your personal in your home.
Yeah.
Looking at the same thing. I mean, it's not like we're just talking about, because you may be listening and be like, well, I have no say over, expense management in my company I work. Well, you do in your household.
Yeah.
And I got news for you. Interest rates aren't going down. I'm sorry, that eventually impacts us all, So I think it's a thing that we can dread, because it can almost feel like, oh, we didn't succeed, so we're having to make these calls. What I'm encouraging us to do, we had to do it a little bit reactively, which didn't feel good, is maybe we take a stance to proactively do some of that. What are some things we can do now over the things that we oversee? And maybe you don't fully oversee the budget for the company in your role, but if you have oversight of any kind of spending at all, maybe take a look at some of those things and saying, hey, here's some things that I think we can be smarter about, 100%. Or we can try to negotiate different. We can look at things a little bit differently, even if you're doing it from the standpoint of just putting some money away, mm-hmm. in case the pressures eventually impact the business that you serve. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's what I'm trying to encourage us to do, and I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to everyone who's listening, is to be a little bit more proactive with that and not let it come to you. And I'll be honest with you, we kind of got caught on our heels because we just have year over year of steady growth. Yeah. And then we had to deal with a little bit of a different trajectory in 2023 and just dealing with that. And so I think that's what we're attempting to be very honest and open about here, is because, it's been a challenge for us as leaders. Yeah.
And then to flow into the next thing that I really want to talk about too, that is parallel. You said it earlier that people could see that, like in 2023, I could really see mm-hmm. that people that worked with us, at least, mm-hmm. were able to self-identify where their needs in life have changed. So let's say I'm a new mom, mm-hmm. and like you said, someone would come to me. This wasn't an abnormal thing in 2023. Mm-hmm. Someone would come to me and say, listen, I know we're reevaluating expenses. I know how important that is to the business and for all of us. Mm-hmm. I would like you to consider me working part-time mm-hmm. at this amount of hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, whatever the number is, because I want to do this. You said that already. I appreciate that. That's proactive communication from an employment standpoint. I feel like that's not even employment. That's like, we're on this thing together. We're on this ship together.
Yep.
What was really hard for me navigating in 2023 was, I know we're evaluating expenses and I know that we're sort of pausing right now, but I need to grow.
Yeah.
We actually had that. Like, we actually had some, listen, I know the business has objectives and I know the business has goals, but you need, Megan, to understand that I got to grow and I got to maybe go. And so for us to have the fortitude, I guess, and for them too, quite frankly, to say that, and us be able to help people find a way, because for one, yes, we are going to be very careful about what we promise, what we don't promise, and what we're able to do. But, I wasn't in the business. You and I weren't in the business in 2023 of making like dreams come true every day.
Yeah.
We were in the business of managing the cards we were dealt from a business standpoint, as I think many companies were around the globe and probably still are. Meanwhile, there are people who, and that's okay, they just, it's something they aspired to do differently or something they just wanted me to know. I guess I had to make a decision. I felt that way in 2023. So anyway, I just wanted to say, like, I really appreciate those forward. I look back now in 2023, people's lives changed for us here on this team. And then we had to respond accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, that wasn't the overarching. That was a particular instance that we have. You're going to have that in good times. You're going to have that in tough times. We've had plenty of people come to us and say, "Yeah, I understand." But at the same time, I think sometimes those requests, those challenges are met in a time where the answer could be yes, and maybe the answer is like, from a value perspective, it's not the right time. So I think that's certainly an indicator. It's certainly something we had to deal with. I think we dealt more so with, because we shared the reality of what we were facing as a business with our team. I think the major point is the fact they were able to be empowered to make decisions for themselves, to really think about, I don't have to work full time. This company values me at part-time, and that's going to enrich my personal life. Oh, wait a minute. I don't necessarily oversee expenses, but I utilize a certain expense, and I'm going to go see if I can find a better deal or an alternative. We had, we had even junior people looking for better deals on software, or a software that wasn't quite as expensive, that they felt like we weren't even utilizing what the Mercedes of software we had bought. We really just needed a dependable, Toyota for right now. And it's examples like that. And I think that was just so inspiring to me as a business leader. That's a lot of the weight that we tend to carry ourselves, but we did it differently this time. And even though it changed the dynamic in some ways of our organization relative to, we were very much 100% full-time, full benefits. And now we have a much more, I wouldn't say it's evenly divided between full-time, but it's, and I think that's another lesson, leaders, is that we spent so much time trying to figure out how to become a hybrid organization after COVID, that we thought flexibility relative to work remote was the end all be all. We didn't see 3 babies coming within, less than a year.
Yes.
We didn't. We didn't. New babies, like first-time moms of tenured people at our company. We didn't know that we were happy as hell, but we didn't see that coming. And then that changes the dynamic for what they need. And, so because of the situation, a temporary situation of our business being in a particular spot, relative to, sales or whatever it may be, we were able to think broadly about our organization and almost restructure it for future. Yes. And it looks different for us. Right. It's going to look different for us. And it does. And
in a good way.
It just, my point being is that these challenges in our universe probably aren't going to cease.
Yeah.
And most likely, and factually, they're not. So what can we do to not only prepare for the moments of extreme growth? I think those are just as challenging as when you
Absolutely.
have when you have a dip in sales that you're not anticipating, because it's not performance driven. It's not this is a misfit, between us and a client.
It's economic.
It's very much so driven by that, and it feels like you're out of control.
Yeah.
Well, all I'm suggesting is that leaders, let's anticipate some of these things that could potentially be a challenge, and let's have some options for it, and let's go ahead and make some moves to potentially create some reserves, and maybe all those reserves go towards your people. There's a lot towards that. But I think from a leadership perspective, the biggest lesson I learned in this year is because we are used to dealing with challenges relative to growth. And when we had a bit of a pullback, a change, I know for me, I won't speak for you, but I know we went through it together, is like we weren't as prepared for those things. And I will tell you, it elicits different kinds of emotions for you.
Totally.
Because I've always known this. Sales fixes a lot of shit. Well, guess what? If it's the alternative, if it's the opposite of that, it can bring on a level of anxiety and fear, especially when you weren't anticipating it, that is difficult. And thank goodness we had the healthy culture.
Yes.
We had the right attitudes.
Yep.
Yes, we had an instance, to Megan's point, where we had someone who, no matter what was going on with the business, needed to go find more money. And guess what? We encouraged them to do that and supported them, and the relationship is still intact.
Yes.
And so that's okay too. I just want to give everybody permission that that's okay.
Yes.
But we couldn't have had that conversation if there wasn't trust.
That's right.
And that's what I'm encouraging, is to make sure that you can foster those types of conversations, as icky as it feels, potentially. It felt icky for you to hear that because you didn't have that mindset.
Right.
But there was nothing wrong with that person having that mindset.
Nothing wrong.
And because there was a conversation and it worked out.
Right.
So I think those are the lessons. And I don't know how many leaders out there of you are experiencing potential some downward turn in your business, temporary or not. I think all downward turns can be temporary if you have a healthy business model, and I think they're good. And it's just like the market. I like to call it a correction. I felt like in 2023, yes, DMA we were forced to correct some things in our business because we'd been so hyper-focused, which is the genesis of this podcast, on rebuilding our culture that we started to do years and years ago, 8 years ago or 9 years ago, whenever that was, when, elicited by the 26% approval rating of my poor leadership. And then from there, we were just so hell-bent on that and doing the best marketing work possible that from a business, I guess, the interworkings, it's not that we've ever been flagrant with money or anything like that. No, we run a very fiscally sound business, pay on time, no debt, some fundamental tenets that I'm very, very dedicated to. That being said, I feel like it was a good year of correction that taught us some lessons that we had not needed to learn.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to share with you today.
That's right. That's exactly right. Which really, and you kind of already led into this, but really one of the big themes for me for 2023 was mental and emotional health management. So not only were we, the podcast is such a bright light and so exciting.
Oh, yeah.
You've been very open about your journey with emotional and mental health on this podcast. That's something I want to work on in 2024, is just being a little bit more vulnerable about that. 2023, you would think, listening to us talk about the year, you would think we went through a really tough friggin' year relative to emotional and mental health. I wouldn't say it was a cakewalk, but I would say because of the culture, all the things that you just said, because of the trust, man, I'm, we've spent some time, and thank you all for listening to repeat episodes over the last couple of weeks, because we've really needed to think back on the year, think about and reflect on how it felt, how it went, and where we are now. And man, I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of 2023.
If you had asked me summer of 2023 if I was proud of things, no, but I do think, and I think it's a great point, and I've opened up about it on episode 34, my personal struggles and the depression I had to deal with and working through that. And 34, I was looking back. I was moving to New York. I was reflecting back on that, and I wanted to open up about that. And I think the work that I know I personally did, and you were doing it too. We were in this together, and you were certainly, my biggest ally through that time, is that work that I was working on so much personally to get in a better emotional and mental state, I didn't know I was going to need it.
Yes.
In 2023 for a completely different reason.
Yes.
And so while there were low moments and there were tears and there were just, there was fear involved and change involved. And I'd already gone through so much personally that when it was presented specifically in our business, unlike anything I experienced in 20 years, because if you've been in business for 20 years, there's not a lot that comes along that you're like, whoa.
We haven't seen
I didn't
that
see
before.
that, or that's new, or that I haven't seen that coming.
Yeah.
There's just a lot, and I'm coming up on 52 years old, so I've also lived a lot. So I am so grateful for the journey of 2022 that helped
Prepare you.
prepare and support us in 2023. And I think, I'm extremely grateful for that. So sometimes that difficult work that you either do on yourself or you do on yourself in relation to your leadership and the things that you're learning, it can sometimes benefit you in ways that you didn't even know.
Yeah.
But the work is so important. And that's why I can't stress enough the importance of doing self-work. Emotional intelligence is something that I continue to just be so grateful for. I took a drastic turn and I talk about putting down the business books and, the books that made me smarter in my craft and started to get more in tune with who I am and what that means. And it continues to serve me more so than, say, if I would have stayed on the course the last 8-9 years of just becoming an even better marketer or even a better business leader. And so I think that's, to your point, something that I think we're both very grateful for.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And now grateful for 2023, just in general. I will always remember that year.
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about looking ahead.
Yeah. I think if we look in, this year ahead, I think one thing I know for sure is that if a transformation of any kind, obviously there'd be a scale there. Transformations are what they are, change. If that's required, I think don't think about it being as something you can do overnight. You can make changes overnight to certain things. But if something really needs to change culturally or about the business, a new business direction or whatever that may be, or like in our instance, we went from being having a workforce of, all full-time people to now a mixture of full-time and freelance, part-time.
50-50.
And again, and so that is a transformation that we're still working through. Right. We're through the sticky part of it. Yeah. And now it's just, as our business, is going to flourish in a different way in 2024. It's not having unrealistic expectations of that significant of a change. And I think that's also if you're working on yourself. If you think you can hop into therapy 2 or 3 times be done, no. I would love for just all of us to read Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown and call it a day and we're fixed. But that's not that's not reality. So I think these types of things are when we really need to take on the Atomic Habit by James Clear approach to something every day. If you're looking for transformation, what is one thing I can work on relative to transforming this aspect of the business today? What's the one thing I can work on transforming, what I know about myself or what I may know about others? What can I do to do that? So I think we can't expect major things to happen overnight. So I know that for sure. I think being open to, I just, the word expenses are just, I don't know. It's just not, I don't know. It can seem so shallow, but I think reevaluating where your money is being spent, which is just a sexier way of saying expenses now that I'm hearing myself talk.
No, but I mean,
but
I
evaluating
appreciate
it versus just cuts. Why wouldn't you be proactive? Cut things that you're not utilizing. So it's almost like assessing those expenses instead of just cutting.
Yeah,
because sometimes it's accelerate the expense in a particular area if it's going to benefit your business.
We can only assume that people are listening to this podcast are in a position of leadership. If you're in a position of leadership, more than likely you have your finger on some money. When you're thinking about the money available to you, that's like what I'm thinking relative to this. When I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, so if I oversee, $100,000, $1 million budget, how am I going to do that to help me achieve those goals? And how am I going to bring those people that need to help me get there along with me in a very reasonable way, right? And so all that does is it just puts you in a position, quite frankly, leaders, to be a rock star to your leaders.
Yep.
And so, our business is a medium-sized business, but now we're 50-50 on part-time and we're 50-50, 50-50 on part-time and full-time. That's a shift for us. So Danelle and I are looking at our budget and we're going, okay, like here's the money and here's how we're going to manage this business going forward. Last year, we didn't see what was coming. And so it was just kind of a surprise. I think this year we're taking kind of the bull by the horns. Yeah.
And not being so surprised by things. And again,
and we should all operate like that.
We should.
That's the advice.
And that's kind of the big lesson for us.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that today in our leadership journey, we have to be a lot more open, especially those of us who are in the wiser category. Yeah. I say wiser. That doesn't mean that we're wiser than. I mean, we have wisdom because we're a certain age, right?
We earned it.
Yeah, we earned it. I think we need to be a lot more open-minded to being cognizant of people's life changes. And if you are truly a human-centric organization, human-centric leaders, you already know a lot about your people because you care enough to learn. And I think it's paying attention to the fact that there, in our organization alone, like I mentioned, we had 3 beautiful babies born in the last year, or a little bit, but anyway, year and a couple months. Yeah. We had weddings. We had I want to work completely remote. Unfortunately, we had a death. Not to our team, but a spouse of a beloved team member that was very, very difficult. So life's going to continue to happen. Yeah. And I think it's understanding that is the case and not being caught off guard and trying to be as proactive as you can. Maybe letting your team know that there are part-time roles that are available for when they choose to whatever. And maybe there is a role for completely remote if somebody wants to go live in Colorado or whatever the thing is. Like that there's opportunities. Can you structure your team to accommodate lifestyle changes if they're a good culture fit, if they're a high performer or a great performer and loyal to your company? Why wouldn't you? Why do you have to be caught off guard by those things? Why can't it be, we've noticed you got engaged. We know your life's changing. So, I think it's being ready. And we had already started to prepare. What we didn't prepare for is things to happen all at the same time. The volume. Yeah. And then that's significant to an organization when you're our 20, size. Size, anywhere from 10 to 30 people. Yeah. Any of those types of changes are going to be a big impact. So I think being proactive around those things and understanding, and that's definitely something we had gotten right, which helped us through, the interesting year of 2023. And I think in summary of all of that is that if you're committed to forming exceptional relationship with those who you're close to at work or in your personal life, it can make all the difference in terms of your ability to motivate and manage any type of change, positive or the other. Yep. And I think that when we are mentally and emotionally in tuned and secure that changes are going to come of any kind, the kind you might predict and the kind that catches you off guard, you'll be able to weather that. Yep. You'll be able to work through that. And of course, it goes without saying that you're running a fiscally sound business, that your own personal checking account,
all
those things are in order. I'm
Yes.
making a big assumption there because I can't promise you on the other end, any of this. But I think if those things are a given, hopefully, or you're working towards it, whatever it may be, that when we have these shifts, we can emotionally and mentally navigate them a bit easier. And so, again, I can't be more grateful for the work that we did that was really, spurred by the fact that I had a poor leadership rating. And now that entire journey, which is what this podcast is about, all the things that we've journeyed through, and, is now it's serving us in a way that's just, it keeps on giving is my point. So any of that work that you're committed to, it will benefit you in many ways. And you'll look back and be like, wow, if I hadn't done that work, that doesn't mean you're not going to struggle. But if I hadn't done that work, I don't know how I would have handled this.
Right.
So
maybe a little bit more painful or a little bit more out of control, whatever. Yeah. So that's good. Thank you. All right, let's transition to music. Google search trends are out for 2023, which I love. We love.
Okay.
We love trends.
Mm-hmm.
People love
I
trends.
love personally my Spotify rap, but
I do too. But if you want to talk about a giant, a global giant, what does Google have to say?
Correct.
Okay. So I thought this would be fun for us. Just
it says to me a lot of people have time on their hands that.
And wow, okay, things like that. Okay, so the most searched musicians, and I want to be specific about location because it's very different if you look globally versus looking in the USA. I just want to say we were very surprised by some of this because, and we'll talk about it, why that is. Okay.
Yep.
So you guys want to guess like most searched musicians globally? Okay. Number 1 is Shakira.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Second, globally, was Jason Aldean, who's got a restaurant in Nashville, right?
Yeah, you can get through this list and then I'll just have some commentary.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Joe Jonas, globally. Smash Mouth, which, wow, let's pull that back from the past, like a blast from the past email. But what happened was there was a singer that passed away, sadly. So I think people were doing research. And then Peppino Di Capri, an Italian musician and songwriter, which I'm not familiar with.
I've never heard of him.
But I want
that does sound like a dish I'd like to taste.
You know what I'll have? You know what sounds really good today? I want the Peppino Di Capri. Is that bad?
Right, but if any of our listeners know anything about it and would like to share some of this, please send us a DM. We'd love to learn more.
Who is that?
So that's my point, is that they're the most searched musicians globally. I can tell you that 2 people on this list, I didn't know the Smash Mouth, but I know that Jason Aldean got caught up in some controversy, as did Joe Jonas.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So to me, this is not just about their music, and I don't know what Shakira's been up to. So how do you say that? Shakira.
Shakira, but
God, Mackie's gonna kill me.
No, anyway. I love it. Shakira.
Okay. Well, it's maybe your accent that's throwing me off. Anyway, I just feel like I just don't find this to be related to music necessarily, but you do have some other stuff on here.
I do. But if we're talking about, it
is what it is.
Most searched musicians.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now let's get into the music making. Okay. So top songs. Okay. First of all, Google has a hum functionality.
I don't know what that means.
That means I can hum a song to Google and it's going to tell me the song. I think that's fantastic.
That'd be a fun drinking game.
I know. Why aren't we doing that? And what it's like, sorry, it doesn't compute. Sorry, it doesn't compute.
Your hums are slurred.
Ew. Yeah, and it just keeps circling like la la la. I can't compute. Okay, so the top songs used with this functionality on Google, hum to search is what it's called, globally. Okay, 2 of these were by Imagine Dragons. Bones was number 1. So 2 out of all of them were by Imagine Dragons. So go you, Imagine Dragons. Bones was number 1, in fact, and Believer number 5. So
okay,
I can't do the Believer right now, but I was going to hum it. I can't do it.
Okay. I don't know either of these songs, so that's
all right. Cool. Oh, I do. Okay. Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Idol by Yasobi, who Cooper knows.
Yes.
I'm sure Mackie Payton does too. Young people music. Also pitched in here, pun not intended, at number 3.
Okay.
Okay. So Imagine Dragons and Yasobi are the top 3 most hummed songs on Google in 2023.
So the whole point of Megan's Wiki that we're being entertained by is to go, we got to figure out this hum and search. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
The rest of this information
We're gonna get on that right after this
quite serve
recording.
me. But, okay.
Maybe with a glass of wine. I'm gonna get that Believer song down because I got to be able to hum it. Okay.
Can't wait.
Then I thought we could bring it in a little closer to home. So the top search songs in the USA, which, wow. Number 1, Try That in a Small Town by Jason Aldean. So there is a counter to what you said earlier.
Correct.
Could have
Stand
been
corrected.
news related, but we need to hear this song, Try That in a Small Town.
Okay.
That's number 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2.
Being from a small town, I probably already did. It'll be interesting to see what his song's about.
I know, right? Let's listen to it.
All right.
Action item number 2. We need to listen to that. The second top song search in the U.S. was Richmond North of Richmond, which you all probably saw this. It went viral, and that's why.
Is it the guy standing outside singing?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that man's voice is like from
heaven.
Like, directly from
he's
heaven.
He's from the southeast somewhere.
Yeah.
Or the east, but I can't put my finger on. But it's just a really good.
It seems like the Appalachian Mountains,
something like that.
Something like
That's
that.
the vibe.
That's what
Well, they're in the backyard. Like,
yes.
Very wooded. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3 was Unholy by Sam Smith and Kim Petras.
Yum.
Yeah, that
Great song. Oof.
was in my head for a good 3 months.
Absolutely,
And
it was.
drove me absolute crazy. So I'm not a fan of this one.
Okay.
I do like that song, but oh my gosh. Okay. And then I skipped over 4, 5, and 6 because the surprise to me was how low Miss Taylor Swift was on the list at number 7 for Cruel Summer. For me, when I was doing this and thinking about this, I was like, for sure. She's on tour all around the globe. She's going to be ranked in the top 3 or the top 5 or the top 10. She's not. So I had to go all the way down to the USA to get her in the top 10, and she's at the 7th spot.
Okay.
Surprising. With as much that she did in the economy this year with that tour?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how you use search in relation to music. I think with all the streaming services, maybe we don't use search
On Google?
as much. I mean, and maybe if you want to, I don't know, do you directly go to YouTube if you want to catch a video?
Well, we talked with Cooper about this last night. This is an interesting thing. Yeah. Maybe you and I do. But he said, no, I'll go to Google. That's the easiest place to go. And then he's going to decide from there. Do I want to look at it on YouTube? Yeah. Do I want to look at it on Spotify?
That's what I'm saying. Well, my whole point, and you're right. And Cooper certainly, I think it's more of a reflection of habits.
Yeah, it is.
So if this was then broken down by demographics,
okay. I wonder if Spotify, do you remember?
I don't know. Like if you were to say, what were Danelle's top search things relative to music on Google? I mean, I think we know the outcome.
Yeah. Brandy and Taylor.
Yeah.
Brandy and Taylor.
No,
but even Beyonce is not in the top 10.
Yeah, no.
And Beyonce had an amazing year.
Yeah.
Even Kanye West isn't in the top 10. Okay? So I just thought that was interesting. All right. So any other comments on music? Interesting.
No, it is interesting. I did learn something because we had this conversation. I learned a little bit more from Cooper than you, but that's okay. Hey,
you did. I was probably half listening, and I should listen 100%.
Anyway, no, it was good.
We will have some links in the show notes for you. Actually, we'll probably just copy and paste a lot of what we talked about. We'll have it transcribed so that you can see kind of these categories that we talked about today. We'd love for you to tell a friend about the podcast. Thank you for doing that. We know you're doing that. And please remember to visit beselfsmarter.com for tools and coaching options for you that you may want to consider in 2024. And until next week, we send you in the week with grateful hearts.
Goodbye, everyone.
As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcasts. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming self-smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandy Carlisle reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.